Good evening, everyone. As you are coming in, just want to let you know that if you're here to speak at unscheduled audience participation, there are some cards, some forms on the back table, a round table right in the back, that you would fill those out. Please look at the back side. It has some instructions on how that unscheduled audience participation flows, and then you would get those to Angela. Angela, wave your hand. There she is over there by the TV, and she'll collect those cards and give them to me at that time. Let's rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Community members, fellow board members, welcome to a regularly scheduled board meeting. Just for some announcements, again, if you're wanting to speak during unscheduled audience participation, there are some white cards in the back that you can grab, fill out, and get those to Angela. Also, know that right at the beginning of our agenda, we're going to be going into closed session with an attorney to talk about some things, and then we'll be coming out to do our regular business. So there will be a time when you're here and we're in the media room or somewhere having a meeting. So just want you to be prepared for that. It's all on the agenda, but just in case you didn't have one. Mary, would you do attendance, please?
Certainly. President Donnelly?
Here.
Vice President Griffith?
Here.
Secretary Hanser? Present. Treasurer Bailey?
Here.
Trustee D'Alessandro? He's absent. Trustee Foster?
Here.
Trustee Schaefer?
All right, board members, thank you very much. I know that we have one change to the board agenda. Mary?
Thank you, President Donnelly. The agenda item is Board of Education matters for item B, 2022 MASB Region 8 Board of Directors election. I'd like to propose that we move that item to the agenda for our February 22nd meeting. This is the OCSBA, Oakland County School Boards Association, is hosting a forum for all the candidates for the region. That's tomorrow on Zoom. An email was sent out for that if you want to participate in that, but it would be a good opportunity to get a better view of the candidates before we vote, and I would just like to move it there. The ballots are due on March 2nd, so I've already spoken with Angela, and she thinks we'll be able to still make that timeline from the 22nd meeting.
All right, so your point is that if we voted today, we would be voting before we got a chance to meet these individuals, but if we wait until February 22nd, we will have had an option to go on this interview or watch their introductions.
That is correct.
All right, is doesn't need a motion, but is anybody opposed to moving this to the February 22nd? I don't see it, so let's just do that, and maybe what we can do instead at that point is maybe Mary can once again instructionally talk to us about when that interview thing is, when we can get in and watch it, and it'll be more informative and prepare us for the vote on the 22nd. Sound good?
Sound good.
All right, very good.
Thank you.
Mr. Throne, any changes?
None.
All right, can we move on to the consent agenda? We have the minutes of the January 31st, minutes of the February 1st, minutes of the February 3rd, bills payable for January. Would someone please put this motion on the floor? Chad?
Move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Is there support? Eric, support. Discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We have before us a motion to go into closed session. Would someone like to read that motion? Heather?
Move to meet in closed session pursuant to the Open Meetings Act, Section 8C, for the purpose of strategy and negotiation sessions connected with a collaborative bargaining agreement and 8E, to consult with our attorney regarding trial and/or settlement strategy in connection with a specific pending litigation.
Very good. Is there support? Chad? Discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote.
Ms. Schaefer?
Yes.
Mr. Foster? Yes. Ms. Cantor, yes. Mr. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Mr. Donnelly?
Yes. So it is 6:35. We're going to move into closed session. Thank you for your patience. All right, everyone, thank you for your patience. We have ended our closed session. It is 7:45. We're back into open session. So we are on number 4, letter B.
We can't stop.
Right, but you're going to just spend a second reminding us when it is that we can meet these candidates.
Thank you, President Donnelly. So tomorrow night, the Oakland County School Boards Association is putting on a Meet the Candidates night. It's a candidates forum for the 4 that are in our region. It is at 7 p.m. and they did send out invitations to all of us. If you don't have one in your mailbox, please feel free to give me a call or send me an email and I'll send you the Zoom invite. It's all via Zoom. If there's any pressing questions that you would like to ask any of the candidates, you can send a note to the reply to the OCSBA email, and they are gathering information for that. So that's tomorrow evening.
All right, thank you, Mary. Item 5, curriculum and instruction. I don't see anything under Mr. Weaver. Finance and operations, Mr. Barna, 2021-22 amended budget report.
Good evening. So the first thing before we get into the 21-22 general fund amended budget, I first wanted to address a couple questions that one of our trustees had with some of the expenses for the return to school OHS due to the tragedy. And so I wanted just to go over the SETSEG statement of loss form and just kind of go over, some of the main high-level items that were done to the high school, in addition to what was covered and what would be the responsibility of the district. And so really what I want to just show you here as a description is just the coverage here, and again, very high-level categories, the mitigation at first, also the demo of carpeting, ceiling tiles, so on and so forth. Then we have the cost of the carpeting for obviously the corridors that were directly impacted, in addition to painting all of the interior of the building, and again, just all of the demo that occurred within pretty much 6 weeks. And so the costs that you see here are the costs that were fully covered by SETSEG. And what it did is it amounted to $690,720 as of approximately 3 weeks ago. So we are still waiting for further invoices. Obviously, there were 2 holidays during this time and during the rebuild, the refresh. And so we still are waiting for some other final invoices in which a portion will be covered by our insurance provider, and again, a portion will be covered by us as well. If we go down a little bit further within the spreadsheet, I'll reference that actually there are the costs that we are going to bear as a district, and specifically these costs are related to a portion of the demo of carpeting and other materials, ceiling tiles, so on and so forth, and paint that were within the classrooms, specifically 58 classrooms in addition to several offices within the district that we are actually paying for ourselves. Again, they weren't theoretically directly impacted by the tragedy, and so that is why they're characterized here. And so what we have here is a net district cost of those changes, those enhancements to the school of a little over $475,000. And again, I referenced a little while ago that we do have some outstanding invoices that haven't come in yet from Jarvis and other contractors, and I estimate at a very high level that we will probably have another $125,000 of additional costs that the district will have to bear. And obviously a portion will also be above that set seg will still cover. But I look at our net estimate as about $600,000 of cost. And so I just wanted to go over this with you. I wanted the public to see in a very open, transparent process as to what these costs were to obviously get our students back into the high school. So this will play a part in my overall budget discussion of the general fund for the amended 21-22 budget. But before I get into that, I wanted to also address actually the COVID-related costs as well, or COVID-related revenue. Bear with me one sec, I'm just trying to find. So this COVID spreadsheet is a culmination of the past 2+ years of COVID-related funding from the federal government, state, county. And so what we have here is really what we use here in my finance department within the district to really track the revenue, but also track the expenses that are associated with those streams of revenue in as clear of a manner as we possibly can from an accounting standpoint. So it isn't technically pretty to look at, but it's something that we use internally within our department to help manage the funds coming in and manage the funds and expenses going out to match that revenue. And so I don't want to go over in the gory detail of these financials, but I just wanted to show that these first several, as you can see, the Oakland County COVID Relief Fund, we received approximately $756,000. And then underneath, we have the use of those funds, such as device purchases. Obviously, we have protective, equipment and supplies. So you kind of get the point that there are several items here for these revenue streams that the district spent money on. And again, I don't want to read to you. I believe that we have this document also on our website. I asked Danny to post this so that it is made public as well. But really what this does is gives you a pretty good detail as to how these funds are spent. I believe that there was some comments at some past board meetings that the district wasn't being transparent, and frankly, from my perspective, that's inaccurate. I have no problem sharing these revenues and costs. It's, obviously it's something that we have to utilize every day in business services here in the district in order to properly account for these funds. I'll go a little further, I went a little further down than I would like. Let me go up a little bit and show you some of the funds that we were receiving this year. This is the second page of the document that gets into the detail. The first column here just shows when that grant period is. It shows you when the dollars can be spent and what time frame the dollars can be spent in. It also goes over the Skyward description that we have in our system, but also the federal government description and the state description of what these COVID relief funds really are. And so as you can see here, and again, I don't want to read to you in detail, but the first one, summer programming. Second one, credit recovery as an example. And it shows the revenue coming in the door. And then underneath some of them, it shows what we plan on using those dollars for and where. Again, if I go to the section 23C, Gear 2 funding, teacher and support staff payments, you see that teacher and support staff stipends paid for summer school last year, and working with students on credit recovery. $29,500 was received, and we're looking to fully spend that out. So again, I really just want to show everyone, the public as well as the board, that we are doing the best job that we possibly can to track these funds and obviously make sure that we're transparent with the public of how that's done. I do want to mention again that We are set to receive a fair amount this year. I have in the general fund budget that I will be going over shortly, approximately $2.3 million of COVID-19 related funds that we anticipate receiving this year. In addition, there is COVID relief funds that will be spent over the course of the next 3 years, and that is specifically the ESSER 3, which is the last item on this page right here. It's $5.6 million. And so that $5.6 million, there's some very specific parameters about how that money can be spent, as is there for the other ESSER funds as well. And an example of that is basically a little over 20% of that $5.6 million has to go to the implementation of evidence-based summer enrichment programs, summer school, if you will, implementation of evidence-based comprehensive after-school programs, and a large portion of it, over 51%, are activities addressing learning loss by supporting the implementation of evidence-based interventions. And so basically the gist of these dollars that are being provided to us is just ensuring that these interventions respond to a student's social, emotional, and academic needs. And they address the disproportionate impact of COVID-19 on unrepresented students. Or I shouldn't say unrepresented, underrepresented students and subgroups. Subgroups such as, the major racial and ethnic groups that we have in the district, low-income families, children with disabilities, English language learners, so on and so forth, homeless. So I just want you to be very clear that there are very specific parameters that we have to abide by for these COVID-related funds. Does anyone have any questions thus far? And I know I went over this fairly quickly, but I do have a large budget spreadsheet that I need to go over as well. So yes.
Quick question, I hope. Thank you for these forms. This is really helpful. Has all this actually been appropriated yet, or is the legislature still holding on to any of this?
So I just found out today that I think it was the Senate, Michigan Senate approved, I believe it was $1.2 billion of funding this year. And so that is specifically tied to some of this funding that we're speaking of as well. The $5.6 million that I'm referencing at the bottom of this spreadsheet, we have not received those funds yet. They are not in my budget right now. And so again, many of these funds, as you can see from my spreadsheet, have a period of time that these funds can be spent. And most of it has to be spent by September of #24.
Anyone else? Chad?
Thanks, Sam. So you answered one of my questions. I think the other one is, besides being able to reflect back to us, back to the community where these funds are being spent, we have a certain level of accountability back to the government to show.
Absolutely.
We have to be able to show that we've spent these dollars the way you've allocated them.
Yes.
Okay.
These are federal funds. They come with federal guidelines of spending. We have board policy in regards to federal funds that we receive, and we must account for them separately, obviously. And that's why you see a lot of detail that is ad nauseum here, because that's what we do in accounting and finance, obviously, is we have to abide by these obviously grant codes. And in our financial system and HR system, this is how we actually account for these funds, both in terms of revenue received and expenses paid out.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, Sam.
Thank you. So the next item on the agenda is what is really the general fund amended 21-22 budget. And again, I just wanted to go over this and just show you the increase in revenue that all public school districts in the state of Michigan received, and how that compares to our original budget that the board approved for this year back in June of '21. So if you look at the column that is column E, it is actually, looks to be almost a yellowish or a pink. It is the 21-22 original general fund budget, and again, that is right here. The enrollment projection that we had was 6,866 FTE. We also assumed a $200 per pupil state foundation allowance increase from the prior year, which would have brought us to $8,311 per pupil. If you look at the column F, this is the amended budget that we're going over today, and as you can see, the state aid per pupil foundation allowance actually exceeded our original estimate and is actually at $8,700 per pupil. That's what we're currently getting today in our district. We actually ended up with an enrollment from our fall count audited of 7,076 FTE. This represents a 3.1% increase, or 210 more students than we originally budgeted back in June of last year. So all this translates into predominantly a $5.3 million revenue gain year over year, or budget over budget. Again, original budget versus the first amended budget that we're discussing today. So specifically, $76.8 million compared to $82.1 million. If we go a little lower here and we talk about, well, before I move on, I should bring up again the COVID relief dollars that I spoke to in the previous spreadsheet. Again, $2.3 million is part of the $3.8 million of federal funds. The majority of those other funds in federal funds are our IDA grants for special education. So I just want you to be aware that's the difference. And that's why you're seeing a higher number than the 2.3 that I referenced earlier. But now if we go down to the expense side of the equation, obviously there are some costs here that I want to specifically speak to so that you have an understanding of why the costs have increased fairly dramatically if you look at it overall. And we look at obviously our basic programs, and again, for those that are uncertain as to what basic programs are, what these high-level functions, I want to just refer back to our legend up on top, just so that you have an understanding of not only what local, state, federal, and other revenue represents, but also our expense side of the equation. What are the high-level explanations for what are in those expense categories? And as you can see in basic programs, as you see here from the key, is general ed teachers and parapro salaries and benefits, stipends, sub-costs, textbooks, teaching supplies, OVA dual enrollment fees, OVA tuition costs, etc. Within all of these buckets, we have over 4,000 accounts within our general fund. And so we have to have some manner of grouping. So I just want to remind you of that. We have a much larger audience today, and so I want to be as clear as possible with them if they're paying attention to me, that is why we roll up our accounts into a more succinct level of reporting. Because if they're not already sleeping, they would be if we didn't do that. If I go down a little bit and we start describing some of the increased cost components, again, we look here at the first line item, which is, if I go over here, you look at instructional staff salaries, and pupil costs, and really the additional 4% increase is really due to our school psychologists at OHS, and additional Dean of Students positions at both Oxford High School and Oxford Middle School. So those are really the key drivers of those additional costs. If we continue down further on the page, again, I don't want to read to you, but the next estimate is $400,000 for an independent third-party review. I had to put an estimate. I really truly don't know what a third-party review is going to cost. But I'm also an individual who has a finance background that is very conservative when I budget. And so I'd rather go high, in my opinion, than go low and then be surprised. And so I just want you to be aware of that's why we put $400,000 as an estimate. We also have an increase of $250,000 for legal fees, again, an estimate. In addition to a PR firm that we had not previously been engaged with. So there are costs there, again, specifically that are over and above what we originally budgeted, obviously in the summer of 21. If we go down a little further, and I can skip over some of these higher dollar ones as well, but I'm not going to skip over the one here that is maintenance and operations. That is a dramatic increase. You see $2.8 million, and I want to specifically speak to that. Approximately $800,000 of that $2.8 million unfavorable variance year over year for a budget perspective was specifically related to our American Rescue Plan special December payment to staff that was made in December of 21, so literally a month and a half ago. That was a payment that was an acceptable payment that we put in our budget when we put together the ESSER spending plan. That is also part of that spreadsheet that I shared with everyone earlier, and that is where a bucket of dollars sits, and that is why that variance is partially as large as it is due to that as well. That represented $1,250 per person, and it will be allocated during my final amended budget when I come to you in June, but right now it's sitting in maintenance and operations for clear tracking of that expense, and then we will distribute it amongst the other functions later in the year. We also have our land balancing of the 13.6 acres. As many of you are aware, we started that land balancing over the summer. There was a small portion of that expense that was expensed for clearing the trees for last year, but the majority of the expense of that land balancing is approximately $475,000, and it's going to be hitting this year. We've already paid for a component of that $475,000. If you're looking at the totality of spend for this fiscal year, it is approximately $475,000. So again, that is contributing to that $2.8 million unfavorable variance for this category of spend. Furthermore, we have custodial services revisions to our contract. As many of us are aware, in all industries, not just custodial services, it is extremely difficult to find staff and staff fully. And so we are experiencing issues with custodial among other employee groups, obviously. As you're all well aware, our ABM staff, they're key stakeholders with us. They're our partners. But they are not directly employed with the district, and so we are looking to do some negotiations, and I basically put in a few dollars more for this year. Whether it comes to fruition or not, hopefully it does, I needed to make sure that we had dollars set aside for that. Furthermore, we have additional security, private security. As all of us are aware, we have ESS security, and they are district-wide now, several FTE within all of our buildings. That comes to basically a 6-month cost to the district of approximately $300,000. And then we have our additional school resource officer that we're adding. In totality, we're estimating a $400,000 increase for security this year. And so that really is the gist of that. There's also there's another component to that spend, that $2.8 million. We have building materials at all of our schools. We have a higher cost for our gas and electric. And so I probably budgeted a little bit too conservatively, but that represents the additional $2.8 million of, again, negative, unfavorable variance, if you will, for that category. If I move down a little bit further along here, really some of the big items here are the revisions to the high school, as I mentioned earlier. We looked here at that $600,000 estimate that I mentioned in the other spreadsheet. Basically, in this outgoing transfers and other, that is where these dollars are represented for the rebuild of the high school. So you see that my original budget for this category last June was almost $600,000. Right now, we're tracking at around $1 million. And again, that's because of the estimate primarily of the high school expenses that we will bear the cost of as a district. When you whittle down all the way to the end for the general fund, we still feel that we're going to be having excess revenue over expenditures of approximately $433,000, and a transfer to the general fund, to the capital project fund of $300,000. we originally estimated we would have $100,000 going into the capital project fund. So the addition to fund balance estimate currently is $133,000 addition to our general fund balance, thus increasing it from 11.2 to 11.371 million dollars. So again, I apologize for getting into some of the nuts and bolts. This is partly why we're here tonight, and I will accept any questions that you have in regards to this budget.
Let us come back up. Thank you, Sam.
Thank you.
School board members, anyone have a comment or question for Sam on the amended budget? Mary?
But of course. Thank you, Sam, for a thorough budget report. Could you please just explain to our community why it is we put money in this fund balance and what this fund balance is all about and why do we want it?
Absolutely. So really, MSBO, which is the Michigan School of Business Officials, gives basically a parameter for all Michigan public school districts that you should maintain a healthy fund balance, just in case there's unexpected, takeaways from the state in terms of per pupil foundational allowance decreases that has happened in the not so distant past. And basically, if there's any run on costs that are unforeseen, it's basically just making sure that you have a decent piggy bank, if you will, to handle unforeseen circumstances. And it involves the operations of your district. So again, if you have a boiler that goes out in a school and that boiler costs $300,000, well, you can't just go to your voters and obviously get a bond quickly. You need to be able to service that expense, and that general fund balance theoretically would enable you to do that. Okay, so that general fund balance is a cumulative, if you will, balance in your checking account that doesn't directly showcase your actual cash balance in your bank for the district, but it's relatively close. And so again, the positive fund balance that the MSBO recommends is between a 15 and 20% of your expenditures each year of your general fund. And as you can see, we are estimating that we're right around 14%. So, our budget has increased substantially over the past 10 years, primarily due to our virtual program and all of the students that we have in our virtual program. And so, if you look back several years ago, we probably were closer to 17%. But again, we've been growing so much that it's been reduced, by a couple percentage points. Still a very healthy general fund balance.
Thank you, Mary. Anyone else? Sam, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Number 7 is human resources. I'm imagining we have nothing. Mr. Pass?
Nothing this evening.
All right. Jill Lamont, Student Services.
Good evening. At our last board meeting, I asked you to review the schools of choice dates, and I would ask for a motion tonight to accept those for the 22-23 school year. If you have any questions or anything else to discuss.
Let's put it on the floor. So if we have some discussion, we can have that. Please, Heather.
Move to approve the schools of choice 2022-2023 school dates as presented. You want me to read them off?
Yes, please.
First semester, trimester 2022, developmental kindergarten through 9th grade, unlimited. Unlimited schools of choice enrollment will open on May 1st, 2022 and close on August 18th, 2022.
Hold on.
No.
Just go back to, we'll open on March 1st, not May 1st.
Did I see my, oh, sorry. Yes, sorry about that. I'll reread it. Unlimited school of choice enrollment will open on March 1st, 2022 and close on August 15th, 2022. 10th and 11th grades, unlimited to IB, Health Science, Engineering Academy, and Dance Conservatory. Early college, unlimited schools of choice enrollment will open on March 1st, 2022, and close on August 15th, 2022. Developmental kindergarten through 8th, unlimited OVA, unlimited school of choice enrollment will open on March 1st, 2021.
That's a
gotta be a
typo. Yep.
Okay. So let's change that to 2022. Correct, Jill?
Yes.
Yes.
March 1st, 2022, close on August 26th, 2022. 9th to 12th grade, unlimited OVA, unlimited school of choice enrollment will open on March 1st, 20, and we'll change that again to 2022, and close on August 19th, 2022.
Thank you very much. Angela, you've got the 2 date changes?
Yep.
All right, very good. Is there support? Eric, support? Is there discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Safety update.
I just have a few items for you tonight. So as the board is aware, and I want to make the public aware, we have moved to an ID system at the high school for our students. So as they are entering every morning, we have increased the number of security that members who are there, in addition to cabinet and other administrators from throughout the district who are checking student IDs at the doors. It's been pretty fluid, but we've also had a lot of extra help. That help, some of it comes at a cost, as you saw some of the ESS costs here. We are looking at a potential long-term solution of a digital way of doing this. So I don't want to promise that's going to happen, but that's one of many items we will be discussing at our semi-annual safety meeting. So that is my second item to share with you tonight. We had one of those scheduled with our village leadership, village PD, Oakland County Sheriffs, Oakland Township officers. We also have our fire chief that comes and several different administrators from different representative levels and alternative schools within the district. We normally meet twice a year, and we had that meeting scheduled for the first week of December. We had to reschedule that given recent events. It is now scheduled for February 23rd at the Performing Arts Center at the high school. And so the electronic card reader is one item we're discussing, along with several others, just with the scope of safety, not finance, not all those other things, but just safety in mind. So.
Very good. Any comments or questions? Jill, thank you very much. All right, we're just going to take a 3-minute break. Let me get ready for unscheduled audience participation, and then we'll roll into that. If you are still wanting to be involved and haven't brought a card to Angela during these 3 minutes, please get a card to her, and then we'll regroup in about 3 minutes. Thank you. All right, everyone, we're going to enter into unscheduled audience participation. There are 2 items that I would like to address to the best of my ability because they seem to be connected to the most questions that I receive or emails that get sent to me. The first is that we would want to know more about what occurred in the days around November 30th, and the insinuation that potentially there's hiding behind something, or that we're just not being transparent. And I want to be very clear. There's a lot that we want to say. The prosecutor and the sheriff's department are in the process of trying to make sure that justice gets paid. And they have asked us one simple thing: stay out of our way. Don't say anything that will affect us. We're the ones that investigated the situation. We're the ones that have all the information, and we will, over time, allow that information to come out, and it will come out in a trial. So just want you to believe that. I just want you to believe that we're not being quiet for any other reason than we too want justice. And we want to be out of the way. We want to allow this process to go wherever the prosecutor and wherever the Oakland County sheriffs feel it needs to go, and trust that they're going to bring this whole thing to some type of legal justice. So that's subject number one. Subject number two is the masking issue. And the call to have a vote. Because we talked about having a vote, and somewhere, again, we're hiding and lying and not having a vote. And I think somewhere we've missed in some of our communication. So I want to reiterate that although we've never had a vote, I don't know that we even know what each other thinks about this issue. This board has agreed for every challenge, every question, every resolution to get clarification from our Oakland County Health Department. This board has approved every one of them, wanting to know more, wanting to get answers. Even to the point where we wrote a resolution because we felt that there was an unconstitutional crisis between House Bill 82, I think it was, and the mandate. Because one seemed to be saying one thing and one seemed to be saying another, and how do I hope some of you recall this. It is this board that drove a resolution to the Oakland County Health Department and drove it to the Attorney General and drove it to places to try to get an answer. We didn't receive any. But one, when contacting my own representative in our area and trying to find out who the writers were for that House Bill 82 and trying to understand whether that was a law that we needed to abide by and we were somehow put into this contradiction, it was clearly stated to me and to the board that that bill doesn't apply to you. It applies to two parts of our government. It allows the legislative branch to audit the executive branch to see if the executive branch gave any money to Oakland County, and hence then could penalize them financially for doing so. And if you recall, the governor said that she felt that that section was unconstitutional, but regardless, it sits there in law. So I said, then you're telling me then that it's not for the average citizen, it's not for us. Absolutely not. My recommendation to you is follow the mandate. So what I want you to know, first of all, is that on behalf of our community, we have attempted to pursue clarifications and answers. I have put out requests even today to have phone conversations with people high up in the county who have not returned my request. I have sent out emails trying to get clarifications due to different things that universities are saying and the CDC is saying, and I'm not getting responses. So number one, you'll hear me say that if there is an issue, or if there is a battle, or if there is a concern over the constitutionality of an amendment, The fight is with the Oakland County Health Department, who made the mandate. But let me be even clearer. Two and a half years ago, the only way for Oxford to get back to school was to get 6 feet away, mask up our kids, buy a bunch of plastic, and we did it. Even people who thought it was wrong and stupid, teachers and staff who felt like, they did it. They did it for the one reason, because we need to educate our kids, and the number one purpose of a school board is to make sure that kids go to school and learn, and that's what you pay your taxes for. So what I'm telling you is 2.5 years ago, these same issues existed. And people sucked it up and did whatever they needed to do so that our kids could go to school. We had teachers that didn't want to wear masks. We had teachers and staff that felt that it was stupid. Because the school district is just simply a small cross-section of what our whole community is. It's the largest employer in our area. So why do I bring that up? Because 2.5 years ago, people thought something was right, people thought something was wrong, but they did it anyways because they wanted to follow a rule and make sure they followed the rule so that they could have class. That's the point I want to make. So what does that have to do to today? There's people on this board that probably think that the mask mandate should be rescinded. There's people on the board that think it shouldn't. We know that things are happening out in society. We know the CDC is saying things. We know that mask mandates and vaccine mandates seem to be falling around the world and in different places. But we have a county that's telling us that we have to mask up. And just like 2.5 years ago, we have people that think it's stupid, and we have people that think it's the best thing to do, and we're doing it because we got to follow the rules so that we can have kids in school. The accusation is that we're hiding because we don't want to have lawsuits. We're hiding because we're worried about money. So let me be very specific. Theoretically, we could vote today, theoretically, and end the mask mandate. And everyone or some people applaud and say, finally. Then there is a portion of our community, our school community, who believes that we just did the worst thing we could ever do. Maybe some because they're what we call pro-mask, or simply because they think it's wrong that we're breaking a rule. Because we teach our kids to follow rules, and we followed rules when this whole thing began. And so we all pass a rule that masks are dropped on Tuesday, only to find out that on Wednesday we can't have school. Because our union workers are seeing how many sick days they are, and then you get 2 or 3% of our union workers beginning to take sick days so that a school can't open, because they're making a point that they disagree with breaking rules. You see, we have to do things as Team O. We cannot do things as 7 people on a board. We've got, if there is a battle to be won, you got to win the battle and the war. We don't have enough substitute teachers to keep our schools running now. We don't have enough bus drivers. All you have to do is have 2 or 3% of the employees of our district start to say, no, You're breaking rules. We don't think you should break rules. And they start figuring out how to take time off. And we can't open a school. Did we win? If we've learned anything, is we got to do this as a whole community. It's how we did it 2.5 years ago, and it's how we have to do it now. Agree or disagree, the whole system has to move in one direction together, or we are going to implode. You have to see that this is bigger than a political or economic or even a moral, ethical, religious. It's more. It is about the fact that we're designed to make sure kids can go to school and learn. And what if we vote something in that causes us the inability to have school for the rest of 2022? This is the stuff that keeps board members up at night. This is why I keep pointing you to the right place for the fight, if you have one. Heck, you might find that there's board members that will join you in that, because they can do that as their civic duty. If they can do whatever they want as a citizen of the state. But in this position, you vote us into office to think a lot broader and a lot deeper than what I think you're giving us credit for. There's a lot of variables that we measure because our number one priority is to make sure that your children can go to school and we can educate them. That has been true throughout the whole pandemic. And as we're getting tired and weary of the issues, and you still got fight in you, why bring it to us? Replace all 7 of us, and 7 of you vote. And you don't have school for the next 4 months. Did you win? You'll be the next group recalled. Be careful. We're not your enemy. We are not your enemy. We have personal opinions about these things. We have professional opinions, scientific opinion, medical opinions. You elected us to make sure your kids go to school. We're not the ones forcing them to wear a mask. Oakland County Health Department is. Period. They change something, we all change. Understand that. If the Oakland County Health Department someday lifts this mask mandate, there's a whole portion of our working community that's not going to like that. But they're going to do it because it's the rule. They're going to do it. They'll fall in line. But break a rule? Go against a rule? We teach our kids to obey rules. That's what teachers are designed to do. So that is my preemptive conversation on at least a couple of the items that you might be wanting to address. As I've done in the last couple of meetings, I want to reiterate right from our board policies that participants are supposed to direct all comments to us, as the board, and to me, not to staff, not to participants, not to anyone else in the audience. I, as the presiding officer, can prohibit public comments which are frivolous, repetitive, or harassing. I'll note the word repetitive. The presiding officer can interrupt, warn, terminate a participant's statements when the statement is too lengthy. You have 5 minutes, and there's a light right there that'll light up and tell you 1 minute, 4 minute warning, and then you know that you have 1 minute left, and then finally again at 5. If your comments become personally directed, abusive, obscene, irrelevant, I can request people to leave the meeting when the person's behavior is in a manner that is disruptive to the orderly conduct of a meeting. Can request that assistance of law enforcement officers in the removal of a disorderly person when that person's conduct interferes with the orderly progress of the meeting. Can eventually just call a recess or adjourn a meeting if the decorum of the meeting cannot be remaintained. We've done a really good job in these unscheduled audience participation. Of just being empathetic and talking from the heart and making sure this is your chance to let us know how you feel. Your anger is not going to help me understand. Language is not going to help me understand. You talking clearly from the heart is what's going to help us understand. If somebody's already said something that you were going to say, let that be said. Repetitiveness, if it's something that we don't know, then let us know. But if it's something that you've told us 6 meetings in a row, it's going to be declared repetitive. And I think that's it. So let's begin. Jeff Weaver, you'd like to talk about volunteers at the high school?
How are we doing tonight?
I'm good, Jeff. How are you?
I'm doing good. I was wondering about parents getting involved, walking the hallways. You could have Bennett checked out like you do for sports. Just to let the kids know the parents are there, you know, they feel more comfortable because of all the little things that happen we all know about. I'm just thinking kids know parents. That's a good thing, you know, and that's one thing. And then alumni, maybe look into the Zen Den from college.
What did you say that again?
You know, alumni, the kids that graduated.
Yep.
A lot of them are going to community schools, local schools. Maybe see if they go to the Zen Den, get some credit hours in, you know, like public service, because the kids would love that. And then the Zen Den, isn't that where the kids go if they're stressed out? Isn't that what it's called? Isn't it? I'm sorry, don't they have a place where the kids in high school go, and what do you guys actually call it? I thought it was Zen.
Correct.
What is it, Ken?
Am I right?
There's one of them, yes. One of them they call it.
Yes.
The Zen Den?
Yeah.
All right,
I love
I'm on it.
I love it.
Yeah, I was looking like, oh God, everybody's looking at me. But no, that's
I didn't
one.
see it on the door.
No, but because I pay attention. I'm boots on the ground. Anybody?
No,
knows me?
good. Thank you.
And I'm a parent that cares.
Yep.
I care about everybody's kids here. That's why I come all the time. That's one thing. And then another thing is, I just think, hopefully, the future of all the changes here, hopefully people can start coming together as a bond. I was wondering, even for parents, maybe have a social thing at the school where they could talk, because there's a lot going on with their kids. Maybe at the cafeteria at night, have a night that it's open. And I just come here and I see how bad it is here. We need to come together.
Thank you. And stay there for a sec, because I do want to, a couple of these things I can talk to. One is, much discussion is happening about getting parents back in, like we've had in the past. Understand, COVID shut that off.
Yes.
Right? And we are, and I think in the next safety meeting, that's one of the topics is going to be, we have a lot of parents who want to be involved. This is a great way to get them involved. Get them as hall monitors, get them involved in some of these things. And so I'm not guaranteeing you anything, except that I know it's on the docket for discussion, because it's the most obvious fix to even some things that we might be paying for.
Yeah.
We may have volunteers that will be trained and do some of those things, and those parent presence, as you said, the kids know them. And so that gives them that level. And there is discussion about how to properly create a parent forum.
Okay.
Getting together, that it's not a board meeting.
Yeah, because
It's an open forum discussion.
Talk to their kids about it.
Right.
and it's good to talk to other people.
So
that
we're
have the same
working on
situation.
it. We're working on it because I know that we have some parents who just want to be heard and want to be part of the solutions, and so we're working at some type of a forum, maybe even someplace other than in a school building, so it's not seen as a meeting.
Okay.
But we're at work on both of your items.
And then, I'm not getting into the politics part. And when it comes to the massing, the only thing I worry about is I like to have more relaxed with the teachers if they could with the kids, because it's a challenge just being in that school. The last thing is they don't want to be hassled. Hey, get that up or do this. I mean, come on, it can't be easy. We're grown people and we have troubles going in there. That's all I got to say.
Heard you. And the third one was the masking. That
Just more
it
relaxed.
adds a level of stress to a situation that's already.
That situation right
Yep.
now. I'm just saying maybe have the teachers relax a little bit on it. Just
Okay.
let's get the kids through the year.
All right, thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
Catherine Hill, wanting to speak to a defense response.
Before I address the defense response, I would like to hear an update on the status of the third-party investigation. We are over 2 months out, and I have not heard anything as to where we're at with hiring a firm to perform that investigation. And number two, how was the security company ESS vetted to perform the security at the high school? Was there a bidding process in place, and were other candidates for security vetted against this company? I want to speak to the defense response to the Franz case. Item number 19 reads, defendants will show and rely upon at the time of the trial that plaintiffs had pre-existing medical conditions which are a contributing proximate cause of the injuries complained of. I was shocked and appalled to read this statement. When a person or an organization hires an attorney, that attorney is their representative. This district's attorney is representing the district's thoughts and opinions. Number 19 in the defendant's response is telling every parent, student, and the world that the administration of this district blames the victims, who are the students, that it was their fault. A 2019 Gallup analysis found that 43% of American households have someone with a pre-existing condition. And Oxford Community Schools is telling us 43% of the households impacted could be at fault by that statement. My son has a lung disease. He will have it his entire life. And we have to deal with that pre-existing condition every day. And I can tell you for a fact, if he were ever shot, it would not be the fault of his lung disease that he were shot and injured by being shot. Or are we talking about the plaintiffs having a mental health diagnosis as their pre-existing condition? I'm sure no credible trauma expert would ever say that it is appropriate to blame the victim that has been a victim of a random act of violence for an exacerbation of an existing mental health condition. It is also just, I'm just in utter disbelief that the district would blame a victim in this manner while also focusing on therapy and trauma recovery the last 2+ months. And as I have said, my son has a lung disease, and previously I've really strived to make sure all of his medical information in his 504 plan is up to date and accurate. And now my trust is broken yet again, and I have to wonder, would this information be used against him? I'm giving medical information to keep him safe and healthy at school. And, now I have to, have that in the back of my head on top of every other trust issue we've had, that his medical information could be used against him by having a pre-existing condition if he were ever injured or harmed at school. So much has been said about trusting the district as we move forward. Unfortunately, every time we turn around, we've been given more and more reasons not to trust, and it's truly shameful that we're blaming a victim and a pre-existing medical condition in this scenario. One could say that things get nasty in court proceedings, but when the victims here are students, we have to remember that. And that's what the students are hearing, and that's what this community is hearing when we respond and the district responds in that manner.
Catherine, thank you. Stay there for a second. A couple of these I can talk to. There has to be some misunderstandings on the third-party review, because there's people who believe that this is something that is supposed to be imminent and happening right away, when that is not the case. We have to allow we certainly can identify a company, we could certainly identify an organization that would be leading it, but nothing can happen until this trial's over, because they have to begin to work their way out backwards. We are not asking someone to just re-look at what the sheriff's department did. What we're looking for is someone to go from a state level board of education to child protective services to a school district counselor to this, that, and the other, and start to look at where are weaknesses in communication systemically within a state structure, so that we can look at across the whole country avoiding something like this. Are there things that one agency might know something that another agency doesn't? Are there things that we could do in elementary school that would begin to give us triggers of how a child is being treated at home? And so this thing's going to take months. It's going to be a year or two probably before the results are in, because we're not just redoing a trial. We're going to have, that's just a launching pad to look at something hugely systemic. And if that's been misunderstood, that has been stated over and over and over again. We have a committee on this particular board, 3 people that are now looking at 3 or 4 different companies, and that's it. We're in the process. But for people who think we're hiding something or trying to lie, because you said, Tim Throne has said, and I have said repeatedly, what this third-party review is. We're not just looking over we're assuming the Oakland County Health Department or the Oakland County Sheriff's Department and the prosecutors are doing a better job than anybody could do, because they've got to prosecute a case. We want to launch off of that to something much broader. And if somebody wants to talk about that later, we can, but please understand what we've meant from the beginning about what a third-party review is. I will get the information for you for the vetting and the bidding for the company, but would you please give your contact information to Angela, because I don't see it on the bottom of here.
Sure.
And oh, wait a minute, there, I see it. The Free Press article. Do you have the original?
I looked at the actual court filing.
Yes.
Yes.
Did you see? Because the language you read
Was right from the court filing.
is also in the Free Press. Free Press only puts 5 or 6 words in quotation marks.
But I'm not citing the Free Press here. I'm
Yep.
citing the actual court documents, I read the entirety
Yes.
of item 19.
So-
Forget about the Free Press.
Okay, so let me say it this way. One of the things that we were in closed session for was to get an update on lawsuits and get an update on things. And because they'd like to clarify and state what this is that in the process of civil lawsuits, attorneys have to create a presumptive list of potential things that they might want to use in the future, and they're always stated legally in the affirmative.
I understand that.
Hold up,
This is-
slow
these
down,
are
slow
students.
down. Let me finish. We do not have anyone's medical records. We don't know whether there's an issue or not. This is what attorneys do to keep a door open, and he might have 18 of them. He may never use any of them. But if he doesn't put them out now in the first level, he cannot put them in later. He waives his ability to do so. So, I don't know the exact term. It was affirmative something. But let me just be clear. We have not, as a school district, and are not as a school district, blaming any victim for what happened. Are not. In a civil case, things get argued differently than in a legal prosecutory case. And so then, monies that are sought can hit a lot of different buckets. And so attorneys go out there with these assertive, affirmative things. The defense attorneys, I mean, the ones filing a suit do the same thing. So, I guess I want to say that there's probably over 15 of these affirmative, assumptive things that an attorney puts in as a placeholder that aren't stating any fact. They're a placeholder to keep something open in case something were to come up that we would know that in discovery. So that's it. That's it. And I guess that's all I can say. And you can agree or disagree with that, but that is that's what it is. It is a placeholder, and it's a process that attorneys go through in order to list things so they don't lose the ability to use them in the future if something comes up and goes, I can't use it. That's it. We're not trying to assume anything. We're not trying to at all have our families or our children being held responsible for what they've experienced. Thank you. Darren, school superintendent selection. Darren?
All right, thanks again, Tom.
Yes, sir.
Try to be brief. Got 3 quick nuggets here.
Okay.
The first one, when I came here, I didn't know the power of the school board. I've done a lot of research over the last couple years, and I understand all the hard work you all do. It's a lot of work that I never imagined. A lot of ungrateful, I imagine, from some, but grateful from others. However, at the same time, with all the power, I've also found out all the power that you don't have, the little power, the no power that you have, and that's been determined over the last couple years. And it's unfortunate and it's sad, because to me, the power that you don't have, Hillsdale College has power. They don't take one dime from the state government or federal government. That's power. They didn't miss a day of school either. But they were never subjected to the federal government. Oxford School District is total subservient to the state of Michigan. And it is by the budget. Most states in the country, over 50% of their budget is directed to education. The dollars, unfortunately, restrict your ability to make the appropriate decisions. That's facts. It is I would disagree on your intro where you said it's not all about politics, but that's not exactly what you said. I would say the mask mandate is all about politics. It's been all about politics since day one. And switching over to that, to masks, I'm frustrated, as is a lot of your a lot of the citizens of Oxford. Everybody does have decisions. Everybody does not have, and I don't think you meant it this way. I don't think everybody doesn't need to just suck it up. I think most did suck it up that first year because we didn't know what we had. We know what we have now, and we know what it is. We know about the masks. We know about the injections. The second year, we don't have to suck it up. March 1st, we don't have to suck it up. A lot of people, the big decision's going to be made March 1st, because not only does our virtual schools open, the hybrid schools are open, the private schools are open. Some have options to make the major significant change and move out of this district or change schools. Unfortunately, as with the injections, some will be forced. They don't have a decision. Their kids will be muzzled again. My guess, the muzzling is going to go away in a couple months. There's an election in November. My guess, it's going to fall off the radar in about 2 months, and then it's going to be quiet for about 6, and many of our politicians are going to be re-elected like it never happened. We'll see. But as with injections, with the masks, people are being forced by tyrants to do stuff they shouldn't be forced to make. Some people can't go to private schools and afford private schools, pay $7,000 to $12,000 in this county. As the same with masks, some don't have the options of choosing to go to other schools. They don't have the option. They're gonna be muzzled. They're gonna be muzzled, and I hate it when I pick up my daughter and see all them kids coming out muzzled. It is frustrating, as I know it is. You all think it's frustrating as well. All I want is choice. So understand the power. Mass, I'll just leave it at that. And the last thing I got is, with respect to your selection, this next selection, you're down to the final 2. To me, what it comes down to in the end, and I have not been at them boards, I have not watched your questions. But if you haven't, I would ask you to ask one question to the 2 remaining candidates. Do you support the 1776 Commission, or do you support the 1619 project? Do you support the 1776 Commission, or do you support critical race theory? I think that's the next battle in Oxford, when all this other stuff is come and gone. The 1776 Commission, if they haven't read it, they've done it. I'm sure hope the 2 remaining selectees have read these 2 things. The 1776 Commission covers America's founding and full scope of our nation's history and treats America's past, even its most difficult aspects, in a reasonable, respectful, and unbiased way. It was made up of a commission of Democrats, Republicans, liberals, conservatives. President Arnn of Hillsdale College oversaw that commission. Critical race theory is a Marxist-based theory, and it seeks to replace the American idea of equal individual rights with the revolutionary idea of unequal rights based on group identity. And I'll just leave it. Racism and bigotry are unacceptable. Period. End of story. People should be held accountable if they're racist or bigots. Period.
Darren?
There's a difference between CRT and...
Time's up.
Yep.
Time's up.
And the
point number 1, obviously that public school system, different than others, the power's in the budget and who controls the dollars. Traveling through the mask mandates and injections and all you and others that are been asking is for choice. And then thirdly, as we look at our 2 final candidates, where do they stand on the 1776 Commission, which looks at American history, in contrast, and I know you mentioned CRT, but what was the title you gave it?
Project 1619 is the bottom line.
1619. Thank you.
Those 2 programs, whichever one they choose, will forever change the education of Oxford. Period. And
thank you, Darren.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Courtney Grabowski, third-party review.
You answered some of it. I actually was really happy to hear that there was money in the budget for the review because we got let me see, on December 4th, Superintendent Throne wrote a letter that said he wanted a review. On December 6th, you wrote a letter that said you wanted a review. On December 14th, you voted not to have a review, but to have a committee that would talk about hiring somebody to have a review, which was kind of a frustrating process, but...
For us, it was the only way to have it independent. It can't be us doing it. So we have to get somebody to get somebody.
To do it.
Or else it's not independent.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear. Okay. So, it was heartening to hear about the $400,000 in the budget. At the same time, it was disappointing that we didn't yet have any idea how much it could remotely be, because I don't necessarily think it needs to happen, like, we need to have the response from the independent review tomorrow, but kind of going back to transparency and having a little more conversation with the public, it would be helpful if we could hear from you what the process, where the process is. Because this is about best practices. This is about no parent anywhere in this country ever again. Ever again. And there are a lot of us frustrated because that's where it stopped. We haven't heard any more conversation about it. And this is meaningful to us, not just because there were children in the hallways that day, but because the parents were rushing from other places to find out if it was our baby. And then horrified because we were relieved that it wasn't our baby. And we need to hear from you the process. We don't just need a pat on the head to be told, don't worry about it, we're taking care of it. We need the conversation. It's important that you include us in the conversations. And I think that this follows not just from this, but also the rest of it. There were a couple of groups who talked to our representative to the House. It was the first time that most of us had talked to anybody of any authority anywhere who could affect anything. We have not had a conversation, and that's disappointing. We elected you to represent us. How can you represent us if you're not talking to us and listening and processing and answering? It's disappointing. So, we would like to hear where you are in the process for the third-party review. Who are you talking about hiring? How many people have you looked at? Those are things that would help make us more comfortable. I heard a kid say, you know, they're doing a lot of talking about making us comfortable. We don't feel safe. How are we supposed to feel comfortable if we don't feel safe? We don't feel safe putting our kids in the school. We keep hearing this word safe, safe return, safe soft return, safe, 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 safe. We don't feel safe. We're not part of the conversation. Our kids don't feel safe. They're not part of the freaking conversation. It's time. It's been more than 8 weeks. It's time that you don't just talk and then tell us to do what we're told. It's time that you listened and processed and continued to have a conversation with us. Is that?
Thank you. Courtney, obviously appreciative that the $400,000 was in the budget. I can tell you that we just simply formed the committee at our last regular board meeting. There have been, I think, shared between myself and that 3-person committee, 3 or 4 companies. A couple have been used by other places that had shootings. A couple were suggested by somebody else. That committee has yet to have its first meeting. The committee to have its first meeting. And so I think they're hoping to get that in before the end of February. And then again, there's a process of getting quotes in, then we'll start knowing what the dollar figure is, right, for the expansive thing we're trying to do.
Yeah, so just like, I'm sorry to interrupt, but just like, once the meeting at the end of February happens.
Yeah.
Hey, this is the timeline now. This is the next timeline.
And so I wrote the term progressive transparency, that as we hit stages of development, to be communicating, but also that we still have to, as many have asked, create some type of public forum where we listen and you speak, and I'm working on that.
And not just listening though, but like processing and saying, okay, this is what we
Always
this is what
processing.
we can do.
Always
but,
processing.
Like, this is answering, not just like sitting and staring at us while we talk, or receiving emails that we, and I know you probably have a million of them, but getting the response is part of the helpful part of the process.
And it's one of the reasons I probably am dangerously saying more than I should today. So I am trying to listen and process and answer.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Christie, Oxford School District, tolerance, etc.
Hi, I'm Christy. I'm Oxford 2015 alumni. My brother is also a junior at Oxford. I wanted to speak a little bit about the zero tolerance at Oxford High School. I know that it was reiterated that there's zero tolerance after this incident that happened. I know that it was zero tolerance allegedly before, but I see my brother come home. When he came home on that day, and he's telling me about it, about how his bully from middle school is in his class, how that bully was told that he cannot be in my brother's class in middle school. He said that that bully was there in his same classroom, cheering, saying things that I'm not going to say because it is hurtful. And how we've gone to the school, we've asked for him to be out of those classes with him. I believe, if I'm correct, that they said that that was not an option. And I want to be completely transparent with this. Yes, my brother's bully is on the spectrum, and that is a part of why they say they cannot do anything. But when there's zero tolerance, and they can't make it an exception for my brother to be away from his bully, I don't understand how that's a thing that can happen. I don't understand how this kid can still be allowed at the schools after an incident that same day where there was the student that came on into the school for about 20 minutes without being escorted, went to 2 different classrooms. They said that same day that that same bully that my brother has made a threat. And I assume you guys know what threat that is. I understand that this kid is going through things too. And what I can't help thinking is that this kid isn't getting his help that he needs. My brother isn't getting the help that he needs. And that's something that I just don't quite get. And I just feel like there needs to be a change there. There needs to be an absolute reason why. And that's just one thing that I can control, that I can help, that I can at least try. And I think that's all I want to talk about today. I plan on saying more.
Christy, I just want to make sure I understand some of the details because, so you have a brother that's a junior
Yes,
and that your brother has had a bullying experience that goes all the way back to middle school?
yes,
Okay.
The same.
And it's with the same student?
yes.
Okay. All right. Which one of them is on the spectrum?
His bully is on
Okay.
the spectrum. My brother is in special education, not necessarily special education, but he has dyslexia, which we fought for a
Okay.
long time to get him out.
And there was a time in which it was decided by the district that they wouldn't be in the same classroom?
Yes. That was kept in
But then
place.
that has not been maintained.
Correct, yes.
So your main question is, how is that possible? There was an issue, it was resolved by doing X, but now X isn't happening, and now you're back to the original problem. Let me investigate that, and we can get back to you.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
They're not loud enough.
I think what we're gonna have to do is make sure that they direct it to their mouth, because if you're off at all, it doesn't work very well. Lori, questions to the board?
Hi, thanks for giving me time tonight. It's a little hard after that one, sorry. That was my daughter, so. First, based on something you said earlier today.
Yes.
I don't think the investigation we want is the same investigation you want. We want to know what's happened in more than just 2 days at the school. We want to know what's been happening, what the policies are, what the procedures are. And we don't think that investigation should wait. There's people that need to be talked to when their minds are fresh and when they're thinking about what happened recently to them. And they don't need to be talked to in 2 years. They don't need to be talked to next fall. There's investigations that need to start soon. And so while we can appreciate that maybe answers can't come to us immediately, there should be questions being asked now. I'd also like to present a letter from a group of parents. There are multiple parents who have signed it so far. Additional parents may be added to it as they email parentsofoxford@gmail.com to be included in this. But I'm going to go ahead and read the letter and then present it to you guys today. I'll also send it by emails. It says, to the Oxford Board of Educators, Superintendent Throne and Deputy Superintendent Weaver. We, the parents and community of Oxford, feel the Oxford School District needs to communicate with us and provide answers through sources other than lawsuits and prosecutors. We understand no one wants to affect justice in the ongoing criminal charges, but there are answers we are due which we can be given without hindering justice. Below is a list of questions we request you respond to with direct and factual answers. Number 1, what is the employment status of Fine, Hopkins, and EJAC? If they're still employed by the district, what is the district's position on why? What decisions do these 3 people make regarding EC on 11/29 and 11/30? And yes, I understand you may not be able to answer that just at this time, but as best as you can. Were those decisions supported by school policies and procedures? If so, what are those policies and procedures and where are they located? Please provide the source. Number 2, we are aware the Board of Education rejected the Michigan Attorney General's offer to start a full investigation immediately, which may have shaped all Michigan school policies to increase the safety of our students. Why was that offer declined? What is the status of the third-party investigation supported by the Board of Education? When will said investigation start, and what is the projected completion date? And will the full unredacted report be made available to the public? It's the most important question I have regarding that. 3, when the incident with the bird was found, what was the investigation procedures and findings? Again, the best that you can answer with that. I would like to know what the investigation was. Like, who was called? Why did parents find out from our children instead of from a school communication? Why didn't the investigation narrow down a list of suspects, leading to a watch list for additional concerning behaviors? If cameras were effective in other incidents, why wasn't the same methodology used for that? Number 4, who are the experts that the school keeps referring to in communication to us? Please list their names, professional certifications, and affiliations. To us, they're just, I don't know what they are. I'm very confused when we're told that our kids can't be talked to because of the experts and we don't know who they are. Number 5, we hear at least one person with previous experience working with school districts affected by similar tragedies offered to assist the district with items such as communications, but the district declined that offer. Please tell us all the professionals that have offered assistance since that date on November 30th. Which offers were accepted, which were declined, and why? Number 6, what is the district's position on mandatory reporters? Does the employee handbook have a section regarding reporting? What training does the district require or provide regarding reporting? Were there any verbal or written orders to deviate from standard reporting policies? 7, what is the district's and the high school's plans for security guards and resource officers? How many have been contracted to be at each school daily? What is the security schedule? Where is the security team hired from? What is ESS? Are they a firm? And then we look forward to full and direct answers. These questions have all been presented to the prosecution team.
You're going to give us a copy of this, right?
Yes.
Okay,
Just want you to know the prosecution team has received this already and confirmed.
All right, very good. Thank you. I think we've talked about the employment status, but yes, we can lay out policies and procedures. I think we've addressed the Attorney General. I will.
It's okay. Like I said, I've got in here how to respond with an email, which is definitely what would be preferred. All the parents on here would like to, you can send it to that email address, and it'll be forwarded to them and anyone else who's.
All right, just give those to Angela, and we'll go from there.
Thank you.
Thank you. Chris Pence, school legal responsibilities.
Good evening, everybody. First of all, Tom, thank you very much for kind of your opening remarks there. Even though you and I may disagree on some things, the fact of the matter is I can see that where you're coming from is a genuine place, and that does mean a lot. So I appreciate that. I don't envy anybody's position sitting up here. None of you signed up for any of this, okay? Any of this craziness, all right? And of course, I'm sorry that it happened. Our thoughts and prayers are with the families that are affected in our whole community. Now, I don't know all of your guys' qualifications or your passions or whatever the case may be, and I'm not questioning those, okay? But I will leave you with a question to ask yourselves, and that is, do your qualifications and your passions make you good leaders for the specific challenges that you're in right now? And I want to know who exactly it is that you guys feel you are most accountable to. Do you believe it's the insurance company, the district, the voters? Are these really who you fear retribution from? If I was you, that's not what I would fear. The basic facts of what happened, at least what's been laid out, are pretty clear, cut, and dry. The teachers, they drew on hindsight from things that they had seen over the course of 20 years. They took that information to somebody and it failed there. It doesn't sound like you need a really high level view of this. It sounds like it was a very, very low level issue. Now, the counselors can't claim the same thing because you could say hindsight is 20/20. If all of us stood together in front of a stove and I went over and I touched it and I burned my hand, and then I said, okay, you go next, and then you burned your hand, you couldn't say, oh, hindsight's 20/20. We've had 20 years of these problems. Those teachers drew on that, and they took action because of it. It seems like the primary concern here is a corporate body, and I do understand on some level that you have to think this way, but on others not. And it seems your primary concern has been liability. Even before all of this, when, everything was going on with the mask mandate and stuff like that, you guys kind of stepped out of your lane and started to indulge in this stuff that I don't think you really had any business in doing. As a matter of fact, when the question is, how liable am I going to be? I'm not sure about you, but if any of my friends ever said, hey, if I do this, do you think I'm liable? The answer is usually, yeah, probably a bad idea, don't do it. Okay? So if you're asking yourselves about the liability of a thing, just don't do that thing. Okay? I often asked myself when it came to the whole pandemic issue, how the district would react if ignoring of experts and their political and social pandering to a loud minority would end in disaster for my vulnerable son. What would happen? Well, thanks to the district's attorney, I now have an answer to that question, and we'll go over what you said, Tom. The district will grasp at any straw in order to do things its way while skirting legal liability. I want to impress upon you that your lawyer, paid with tax dollars, drafted a legal document denying the district's liability for injuries sustained by a student because of their pre-existing medical conditions. They wrote this on paper and sent it to somebody. How did that even get past you guys? Now, I understand that they've got to list out all of these things that might or may not come up, but if I was you, I'd stand back and go, there's probably some things you shouldn't touch. I really wouldn't like to know, as a parent of this disaster, to know maybe the defense attorney will bring up my son's medical conditions. It's terrible. Does any of this, could the kid just not get away fast enough because he was in a wheelchair? Or did he have a heart attack because he was freaked out? Well, none of this matters. What kind of person does that matter to? And the only person that would matter to is someone who really didn't know who they're accountable to. The failure here is that you guys have, unfortunately, been cavalier with the most important responsibility a school has, and that's safety. You can't be educated if you can't be safe. And you guys set that tone. And your tone over the last couple of years has been, we do things the Oxford way. We do it our way. Are you guys a private school or a public school? A lot of the questions that you guys ask sound more fitting for a private school. And even some of the complaints that I hear that come before this board are for a private school. So I'm just going to leave you guys with the question, and then I'll wrap up. To whom are you most accountable? Whose judgment and liability are you most concerned about? And how low are you willing to allow this district go to avoid that liability? Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. I've got your 3 points. Wanting us to reflectively ask the question for ourselves, those questions for ourselves. Main concern is that we're more concerned about liability than the number one thing, which is the safety issue, and that we have skirted.
I feel that you've attempted to, yes.
Okay, I got it. Thank you. Is it Angie Reed?
evening.
Good evening.
So, based on your earlier comments, I myself was pretty much dissuaded from coming up and even speaking tonight, but I am not here for myself tonight. I'm here for the students. And I had to write this down so I wouldn't forget anything, so forgive me if I'm reading. I'd like to take a minute just to introduce myself. My name is Angie Reed, and I am employed as a substitute teacher in the district. I am also the boys and girls JV tennis coach at the high school. I sub in all buildings, but am almost exclusively at the high school. My daughter and stepdaughter are both OHS grads, graduating in 2020, the first year of the pandemic. My son is currently a junior at the high school. I have the distinct honor of working with an abundance of amazing young men and women daily. I love my job. Tonight, I'm speaking on their behalf. Many have entrusted me with their stories and have asked me personally to be their voice. This is what they ask. Please allow us to finish out our school year without having to hide our faces any longer. The seniors especially, one student said, we just want to go back to feeling normal. As seniors, I feel so bad for the freshmen and sophomores because the pandemic, they have never had the chance to experience what high school is really about. I loved every minute of it before we were locked down. Since the beginning of the pandemic, which for this year's seniors began for them on Friday, March 13th, 2020 of their sophomore year, this was the last time those students felt normal. These seniors have not had a regular year of school since they were freshmen. They have had to forego dances, assemblies, even sporting events. We will be doing them a disservice if we continue to force them to live a life without the interaction so coveted with something as simple as a smile. Think about that. The last time these kids saw each other's smiling faces was on March 13th of 2020. If you've had the recent pleasure of coming to the high school, you will find that many new safety measures have been implemented. Most recently, students are now required to show ID to enter the building. Backpacks must be clear, and no sunglasses, hats, or hoodies are allowed to be worn. This is done in an attempt to be able to confirm the identity of each student. Just this morning, a student noted in class, "So my face has to be covered below the eyes, but my hair will prove who I am?" Seems ridiculous. The students understand why the additional safety measures have been added. The events of November 30th go without saying, but they know that just last week, one of their own, a fellow student who did not have permission to be on school grounds, made it all the way to his first hour class without being stopped. They also know that if this student had not been wearing a mask, he never would have made it as far as he did. So the Oakland County Health Department reported in 2020, and this is their information, that there were 0 deaths in Oakland County attributed to COVID in school-age students up to age 18. However, the county did report that there were 21 suicides documented. This speaks to mental health and healing and its importance outweighing the fear of a virus for this age demographic. Is there a possibility that this board could ask the OCHD to allow our students to have the choice to aid in their mental healing? Maybe just Oxford kids, I don't know. And finally, this was just a couple of examples of direct quotes from students. The first one is, "The best part of my day is walking into a classroom and seeing my teacher smiling at me." And finally, my last one was written on the day of November 30th, and the student wrote, "We are no one to anyone anymore. We are not a smiling face if we are having a bad day, a kind expression as we walk down the halls. We are blank robots with peering eyes. Maybe if we could see each other as humans, things might have been different. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Angie, thank you. Thank you. Your number one concern is the students, and you're quoting them, and the quotes allow them to finish without the mask. Let us just get back to normal. Nothing's been normal since March 13, 2020.
Correct.
Why do we got to take a hat and sunglasses off, but we have to wear a mask, and how are you going to do facial recognition in that sense? And then referencing the child that made it into a classroom a bit ago. 0 deaths from COVID, but 20 some, just under 30 suicides in that same period of time. Why doesn't someone ask the Oakland County Health Department to consider these things? We have. With no response. Want to see a teacher smile. And I think I'll have no one to anyone in my mind for a bit.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir? All right. So let's...
We're getting to the point of being repetitive.
On the mask issue? So just catch me. Kelly Ford, mask vote, we were promised. Okay. Bobby Roop, the masking of our children.
Good evening, thank you, and I'll try not to repeat what's already been said. My topic was the illegal masking of our children, so I wanted that to be on the record. But I want to talk about a couple things, and first, please no one on the board take this personally, because you guys are a team. Don't take it personally. But you keep talking about these excuses. At first it was, we can't make a decision because it's the Oakland County Health Department's order. We have to follow the order, right? So take your direction, take everything, take your focus to the health department. We've done that. We've seen where they stand on it, that they just write the orders. They don't enforce them. The next excuse was that there's lawsuits, that if you step away from this, you might get sued from somebody. The next excuse was that Johnny might get sick at school and go home and get grandma sick and grandma might die. Now we're hearing the excuse that teachers might quit. None of this has happened yet. The health department hasn't come at you guys. They aren't enforcing the order. The lawsuits from some other group hasn't happened yet. In fact, the opposite has happened. Johnny hasn't gotten grandma sick, right? Can you prove that? That hasn't been proven anywhere. Not once have we seen a lawsuit or a case where Johnny got grandma sick and their family sued the school. Show me a lawsuit that proves that. You can't prove it. Teachers quitting. I've got a very reliable source that told me at church on Sunday, pray for our high school staff and teachers. Why? Because they're ready to quit. Why are they ready to quit? Not because we want them unmasked. None of this has happened, and in fact, all of those things are rooted in fear. Just like all of the rules and mandates rooted in fear. If you don't do this, somebody could die. If you don't do this, somebody might get sick. It's all these mights. My grandpa, 87 years old, says mites don't grow this time of year. You ever hear that? We can't root our decision in mights and fear. That's what we're teaching our children. It's not about following rules. We're teaching our children to root their decisions in fear. And these rules, despite their constitutionality or legality, just follow them, right? We've done that for the last 2 years. We watched our homes be shut down, our businesses shut down, our restaurants shut down, our churches shut down. When are we going to stop just following the rules because the rules are bad? There becomes a point where we see and we know that the rules are bad, and I believe that you guys know that. So we're just going to keep following them, though, even though we know they're bad. We talk about security issues. These masks are causing a security issue in the schools. We know that. We see the mental health issues in the schools with the students and the staff. I don't need to repeat what she just said about suicide rates. We know for a fact that suicide rates have tripled in Oakland County. The mental health in the staff, again, you guys need to look into the staff. The teachers in the high school are burned out. The person that told me, they said that they are burned out. They were super thankful for the snow days that occurred so they could have a couple-day break. These teachers are going to walk away. This is what we do know. These are the facts, and the truth must outweigh our fears. There's no unity in fear. Fear drives division. And it says right there, together we are Oxford strong. There is no strength in fear. Fear is a weakness. That's all I have.
Thank you, Bobby. That the progressive arguments that we have used are excuses, not arguments, because according to you, they're rooted in fear, not in rules.
Not in fact.
That when do you stop following rules because they're bad rules, and the net effect is the following of those rules are creating security issues, suicide rates have tripled, teachers are getting burned out just enforcing. And so hence asking the board to look at the idea of having truth drive out fear and base your decision on that rather than, on truth rather than fear.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Kit Grabowski.
Hi.
Hello.
Again. This will be short and sweet since we don't want to be repetitive. However, this is about masks. It is about safety of our kids. It is about the health of our kids. There has never been any reason for the mask mandate. We have all been, most of us, I've seen at the Oakland County Health Department numerous times. Cannot say I've seen any of you there. Can't say I've seen any of you there supporting us. Whether you do or not, I have no idea. However, the masks, throughout history, masks have been used to hide identity. They have been used to rob banks, murder people. The security issues at the school are not 100% the mask issue. However, the masks do not help. These kids need to see faces. You want them to be happy and healthy. They need to see faces. They need to not be breathing their own germs in because, in all honesty, they're losing their immunity to everything. The cases of RSV should be very poignant of that. I have seen several studies and commentaries in the last 2 days with regards to the fact that everything that has been done during this pandemic has been backwards. From the fact that they have never ever used a lockdown for anything. They've proven the lockdowns don't work. Masks, they help, yes. However, based on the current 7-day rolling totals from the state of Michigan, Wayne County, kids with masks, 0.11% cases. Washtenaw County, also with masks, and Oakland County with masks are at 10%. Their total cases have been anywhere from 19 to 22%. Macomb County, without masks, is also 0.11%. Lapeer County, which obviously is much smaller and they are much more spread out, has not had masks on. They are at 0.08%. Genesee County, which has been inconsistent with masks since the beginning of the school year, is also at 0.11%. What does that say about the masks? For starters, if the masks were so important, why are the children the only ones that have to wear them? And why is it only at school? They are not getting COVID at school. They are getting it everywhere else because the minute they walk out the door, they take the masks off. Because they can't breathe. They're getting sick. My daughter, my 10-year-old daughter, I get a phone call 30 minutes after she gets into school. She has a headache. 2 hours later, her throat hurts. By the time she gets home, she is so stuffed up she cannot breathe. And I spend the next 8 hours getting her so she can breathe, getting her throat to stop hurting, all for it to happen the next day. This is constant, and she is not the only one. We need you guys to go with us to Oakland County. We need you guys to demand, not ask. They need to give us an ending date. What do they need to end this mask mandate? Because originally they stated that when it got to moderate to low levels, that the mask mandate would end. I'm thinking when it's less than 10% or right at the 10% mark, I'm really thinking that's not a moderate level. And when I say percentages, that's of their county populations. When you get into the state, it's the same thing. There is no cause for these masks anymore for our kids. I'm not saying that people that feel they need to wear them because they need to protect themselves shouldn't wear them. But these kids are not at risk. The studies have shown the people at risk are the elderly, the ones with severe comorbidities. I know this one for a fact because I lost my dad in December. But he didn't die from COVID. He died because of his comorbidity of a 15% functional heart that had been going 6 years. Get rid of the masks.
Kit, thank you. Safety issues, hiding identity, but actually some of the negative effects of the mask, losing immunity, headaches, breathing, sore throats. And then I think one of the things that you wanted to lay out as a kind of a compelling argument is that when you lay the counties that are mask mandated and those that aren't, the percentages all fall in the same category. They're not, so in that sense,
there's no difference.
It's not making a difference. So, and also the last thing is for those of us on the board to help and join you all in your efforts.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It needs to be demanded, not asked.
Thank you. Diane? Mask mandate? Stepanovich? Did I get it right?
She left.
Okay.
I don't see her.
All right. Marcy and Peyton? Marcy and Peyton? I see one of one, and one of two, and two of two, so
Yep, and Peyton will speak on her own.
she's gonna, okay.
Yep, as usual. And again, like Bobby said, I know some of you, and I have a lot of respect for you. We disagree in some things here. So let me just start out. My name's Marcy Andrikis. My daughter Peyton and I have been speaking at these meetings for quite a while, and it's getting very disheartening because while you have been saying all the right things, we are trying, we hear you, you are not doing the right things. It's not to hide behind the fear of a suit. Now you're saying that's not it, it's not the immunity anymore. It's more you're worried about staff calling off and hiding behind the unions. So I want to share a story with you. I was asking my daughter what she had been working on at school. She said she had to write about someone that was a hero to her during these COVID times. I said, did you write one about Daddy? Because he's always your hero, and he gets a lot of stories written about him. I was surprised when she said, no, I wrote about you. I said, well, me, why? And this is the part you guys need to hear. She said, because you never panicked about anything. Even when there was tons of people shopping, not a lot of food, you made it an adventure. You always had our cupboard stocked. This next part makes me cry. She said that you always worked very hard to make sure I stayed connected with my friends, arranged times to hang out and socialize, so that I wouldn't have to be by myself anymore. A lot of my friends and the other parents weren't doing that. This last part really says a ton. And these are kind of more her words. This last part is why I come here. She said it's because you've done the research, found out how bad masks are, and because of what they did to me. You worked hard, you got me an exemption, when most kids can't get exemptions or their parents weren't trying to get them one. And even though Peyton still doesn't have to wear hers, she says you are still fighting for all the other kids. You know, we don't think kids are always listening, but they are, and they are watching. I'm so proud my daughter sees, knows, and appreciates what I do for her, and her dad does for her. But at the same time, I'm so sad because you, the board, have said, Peyton, we hear you. We know this is about you. And we're proud that you come and you speak on behalf of all the other students. But then you don't take action. And this is what she sees. I'm sure you've heard about the girl that she had a mask exemption at the high school that smiled at the shooter as she walked by, or as he walked by her. Right as he went past her, he shot the kids directly behind her. She thinks, and her counselor has confirmed, that smile saved her life. I've heard you're now banning hoodies, sunglasses, and hats because that can conceal someone's identity. As I read this, do you hear how ridiculous this sounds? Take the mask off of our kids. Let them smile at each other. Let them see each other's emotions. That will save more lives than banning hoodies and hats will ever do. And not just because they can smile, but because now you can see their faces. You know how they're feeling. You may be able to help a troubled child before it goes too far. I don't necessarily mean another school shooting, but how about another suicide because we missed what's really going on with one of those children? And we missed those signs of them being in crisis. So I have to ask you, how do you go home, live with yourself knowing you could have made a difference, but you chose not to? At this point, in the name of mental health and safety, take the mask off these kids. And shame on the people in the district that will play a game of calling in sick or using the union when our kids' mental health and safety is at stake, which you're afraid of will shut the schools down. Shame on them. We don't need them in our districts anyways. Thank you.
We as a board are listening and hearing. We're just not doing the right thing. What an honor it must be to have your daughter write about you as a hero. That's cool. That's good. Take off the mask so that we can see these kids and maybe we won't miss some of the signs, whether it's signs of depression, anxiety, or fear, hurt, whatever it might be. We have to be missing some things if the kids are masked all the time. All right. Peyton,
Hi, my name is Peyton. I'm an 8th grader at this school. And I guess we haven't been able to make it to the past 2 meetings because of the incident and stuff. But I'm still fighting for my friends about the masks, even though I don't have to wear one anymore. Because here are a few things that I heard before everybody started talking that you guys kind of presented as something that we should know before we start sharing what we think. You told us that thinking about the wearing or not wearing masks, like trying to, like you have your opinions in the health board or whatever is stopping you from being able to do that, and that it's keeping you up at night, and it's a lot to think about and stuff. But I would also like to tell you, back when I was wearing my mask, and I know for a fact that my friends who wear their masks, thinking about having to wear masks the next day and failing grades and not being able to think well because they're focusing on breathing is keeping them up at night too. I personally, my bedtime is like 10 o'clock, and I admit that thinking about my friends, I'm up to at least probably about 2 in the morning every night because it stresses me out, not just like my own grades or whatever, but about my friends having to wear masks and not being able to breathe as well because their parents like can't find a place to give them an exemption or stuff like that. When I was wearing my mask, I ended the semester or the school year with A's, B's, and I's. During the school year, I had some C's and D's because I couldn't keep up on my work. The mask was definitely stressing me out. I could not, I was focusing on breathing more than on the lesson, and I am always an all A student, so luckily I was able to end the year with A's and B's. But this semester, when I got my mask removed at the beginning of the year, I was able to finish with all A's and 2 A minuses. I almost had a 4.0 this first semester when I didn't have my mask on. People, you say that like you never know the opinions of other people, and like if you somehow were able to get the masks off or whatever, that you don't know how the public and everybody would react. But if they were really that concerned about their children wearing masks or whatever, they would be at this meeting right now speaking up about it. So like my friends' parents, like my mom has told them about the meeting and asked them like, hey, why don't you come, because we know you don't want your kids wearing masks anymore. I believe that they are more scared to share their opinion because they are scared of being judged, because that's a lot of judging is going around in this world. I said this last time and I'm going to say it again. America is not feeling like America very much anymore, because free will and stuff is kind of being put away. And you're telling the health department or asking the health department like why can't we remove masks and stuff, rather than rather than just removing the mandate, like rather than saying you don't have to wear masks anymore, why not make it optional? Like if parents are so scared of their kids getting COVID or whatever, why don't they just not send their kids to school? There's online, there's hybrid, there's a ton of different stuff that they can do. If they were really that scared of their kids getting COVID, their kid would probably not be at school. And in the beginning of the year, when we had that 3 days of optional mask wearing, I saw over at least 90% of the school without a mask on, and maybe 10% of the school with a mask on, and I believe it was more because of them highly recommending it, so it kind of made parents and stuff a little bit nervous. And about the vaccine clinics, I don't know if those are right. I don't think those are right. If their kids really wanted to get or really needed the vaccines or whatever, they should take it to like a professional doctor at a doctor place or whatever. I am not vaccinated. I am not boosted. I have none of that. I don't even wear a mask, and I haven't had COVID since 2019, maybe early 2020. And it's in the winter, so people getting sick is probably not going to be always COVID. It's probably just going to be the flu or whatever. Because it's in the middle of winter, it's cold outside, people are cold waiting for their bus and stuff. And my mom, there was this lady that her kids were coming home crying every day. Her little kids were coming home crying every day, and she was begging for a mask exemption. My mom helped her get one, and she sent this big paragraph about how she was so thankful, and her kids literally came home saying it was the best day of their lives because they didn't have to wear a mask. Thank you.
Peyton, thank you. Here fighting for your friends. Kids are stressed out. It's affecting them. It actually affected grades. Concern for freedom in general in America. Why not optional? You touched on the vaccine clinics for a bit and mentioned that fact that, isn't it wintertime? Aren't people sick anyways with flu, colds, and whatnot? But I think the main thing is you're fighting for your friends and want us to realize that this is negatively affecting them and that we should do something about it.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mark, students.
My name is Mark James Gillum, and I'm representing my 14-year-old daughter who is in 9th grade here. She's a 6-year student of the district, and we came here because we love this district. And Mr. Donnelly, I don't think we even knew each other until we ran into some major problems and things that were kind of showstoppers. And one of the things that just off the top of my head surprises me is, I don't know if Dan's on vacation again or not, but Corey and yourself, that you're trying to silence the parents. We have 5 minutes to talk and communicate our concerns to you, and you're telling us you don't want us to talk about specific topics. A teacher gets up here, somebody who works with our kids every day and is representing the interests of the kids and reading their statements, and the second she gets done, Corey says, "Oh, we're talking about masks too often." If that's the best you have, I think you should leave. Which point, Mr. Throne, I want to commend him, and I think he's a really smart man to step aside. And I think it's best for the district. Mr. Donnelly, as you know, I've also recommended that you step aside now more than ever. And we had an incident at the Legacy Center where Mr. Donnelly and his wife, Kimberly, and one of their agents, Todd, called and told the police that I was in the parking lot creating a threat.
We're done.
Oh, this is business.
We're done.
No, we're not. I have 5 minutes.
No, it's
You're
done.
going to shut me up?
You can't personally assault. You can't personally
I'm not
attack.
assaulting.
You used my name and Corey's name already
You
twice.
called my
You're
wife.
not talking.
You called
enough.
my wife.
Enough, please.
So we're not allowed to talk?
Suggest that he gets removed.
So the parents are not allowed to talk
Suggest that
for
he
their
gets
5
removed,
minutes?
please.
Sir, you've been asked to leave.
It's frivolous. It's repetitive.
I'm leaving, and it's on the record. This is on you. I will leave willingly. I'm happy to do that out of respect for you and the law enforcement in this community. But the parents are not going anywhere. And you cannot silence me, and
It's
none
enough.
of your people can silence me.
It's enough.
You gotta go, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Andrea Jones, safety.
Hello?
Hello.
I am going to finish Lori's letter since she was not able to.
The one that was being read?
Correct.
Thank you. And I think, were there...
I'm sorry, I'm going to move along because I only have limited time.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so the last question was, what is the district and the high school's plan for security guards and school resource officers? How many are contracted to be at the school daily? What is the security schedule? What is the security teams hired from? Does the district work with a, hang on. What will their new roles be and be tasked with? This being the important part. At the beginning of this, you stated that the prosecutor asked you one thing, not to talk about anything. But we also got an email from the prosecutor as parents because we are victims of a crime, stating that if we wanted to make a, a statement out in public, whether it be social media or to the actual media, that we run it by them. So we did. So we submitted our questions to the county prosecutor, and we did get a response back, and nothing in this is a conflict of interest for the criminal cases, so that will not be an acceptable excuse to not answer our questions. That being said, to ensure these answers are provided within a timely manner, we request a response by close of business Wednesday, February 16th of 2022. The email address is provided, and we welcome any additional information that you would or you feel should be made aware of in the response. So again, we will give those to you. The next thing I'm going to read is from my son and another group of students who met with Alyssa Slotkin. My son has been trying to get a meeting with the principal of the high school since you went back to the high school. The first day, he was told he wouldn't be able to see him, that it would be 2 weeks. I'm going to repeat that again. 2 weeks for a student to have a meeting with their principal. That's absolutely ridiculous. But he was able to meet with Alyssa Slotkin, and this was his statement about that. He finds it really odd that Alyssa Slotkin, who is way more important than Wolf, took the time to come and talk to the Oxford students. And during that meeting, he made it very clear that it's really hard to learn when you don't feel safe, and that Oxford Schools is more concerned about making you feel calm opposed to feeling safe. So the kids came up with a list of security changes that they feel are appropriate, I feel are appropriate. So a minimum of 4 police officers stationed in the high school, as there are 4 different quadrants in the high school. They would like metal detectors. On the first day of school, my son chose, instead of going to class, that he would go to the office and ask to speak to his principal. He was told it would be 2 weeks. So instead, he sat in the office and waited for the next available person to speak with, which was the vice principal, Mr. Nuss. When he asked Mr. Nuss about metal detectors, he was told that, well, we're looking into it, but the overall problem is the image that it would give the high school. I think the image was lost on November 30th, or to be quite fair, before that. I don't think there's an image problem with metal detectors. Where is the information when you guys say you're looking into it? How much do they cost? Who did you talk to? When did you do this? This is information we have a right to know as parents, and certainly our students. His statement about Mr. Wolf, I see 1 minute, he needs to be more present. Come to the classes, in the lunch, in the hallway. He's been non-existent since they've come back. This is the leader of their school. Same with Roan. He's not here tonight during public comment. He was gone the first week we went back to school. He was up in Lansing. Seems like it would have been important to be here. Better communication, period, during Alice lockdown, according to the kids. Where was the person on the speaker telling them where the danger was so they knew which way to run? They had no idea. They don't feel safe, and you don't listen to them. You've yet to ask them. It's their story, it's their trauma, and you've taken that away from them by not giving them a town hall or anything. The only thing I will say on that is, in the middle school when they were there, he was given a survey by one of the teachers. On a scale of 1 to 10, how safe do you feel? My son, I didn't know he had done this, had written a 2, and then below that there was a line for a comment. So in his own words, he wrote, and I'll be careful how I phrase this, I don't effing feel safe. And he said, Mom, I did it on purpose because I wanted to force them to have to ask me how I felt. I wanted to look them in the eye and tell them how I felt.
Your time's up.
We never heard back. Never.
Thank you. right, finished out that document that we're all going to get, right? We got one for each of us? Okay. But then went on to talk about your son and a conversation with our Slotkin, and specifically how he feels and others like him feel at school, whether it's metal detectors or whether it's the fact that we're not seeing key people in classrooms or lunchrooms, and we just don't feel safe. And that maybe some comments that were put on a survey were never followed up on. And so, thank you. Brian Cooper?
Hello.
Hi, Brian.
There's a few different topics, just a little bit scattered, and I know we've talked about a lot of things tonight. So one of the things I was hoping to address that we talked about early on was a secondary notification system for the lockdown at the school. We were talking about that there is an audible one, but we needed a secondary one as well, something visual. I was wondering if there's any input on that moving forward, and if we're going to have anything in place before the end of the year. That's one point.
Okay.
The second thing, I was a little bit discouraged, and I just want to give feedback, and again, I don't want to be destructive, I want to be constructive with feedback, is that when I was kind of touching base with my daughter coming home from school, this was the second week on Tuesday, so the second day of the second week, and I was just trying to get a vibe and ask how things were going, and her impression of what was said in the class, and again, I say her impression because I wasn't there to hear it, but it's 14-year-old ears versus in adults' ears. But the fact of the matter is that this was her perception of what was said, and essentially it was the teacher was letting them know that it was time to accept it and move forward. I felt that that was a damaging comment for a 14-year-old that was in that hallway to hear that. And that worries me because I'm concerned that if not all teachers are instructed in a particular way to handle trauma, that they may respond in a way that might not be appropriate. So I was hoping that we could understand what training has been done up to this point and what will continue to be done moving forward. That was the second thing. The same day we were having that conversation, I was even more discouraged when she told me she went into the bathroom and there were two girls vaping in there that offered it to her. The reason why I feel concerned about that isn't so much so to be foolish and say, well, kids aren't vaping and doing things like that. It was more so because of the respect for the level of security at the school. It didn't seem to faze them that on the second day, they're already back in the bathroom vaping. To me, if they can get the vape in, it doesn't seem to me that they would hesitate to bring whatever else they want in. So to me, that's worrisome. And I do worry about the status of the bathrooms. I've also mentioned, and I mentioned it at the last meeting time when we talked about it afterward again, is I do want to be proactive as a parent, help facilitate communications with the staff and work with the teachers. That's still important. I haven't heard a great deal back on that yet in regard to both parents having a voice or an informal forum that we talked about, and we didn't get to, again, say that publicly, but I want to say that again publicly, that I would like to see an informal forum for parents and students as they see fit. Secondly, Sam Barna said that we were asking for transparency and they were being quite transparent. We asked that question quite a long time ago, so I found that to be frustrating, and the transparency that I see with that to avoid miscommunication was that it's very difficult to find. That was the first time we saw that broken down on paper, and I'm glad, but when it comes to ESSER 3, for instance, the fact of the matter is that it's encouraged that we have communication from the community perspective, and I know an email went out asking for very general questions on how people would like to see that money utilized. But again, I do feel more communication is warranted, and the communication we're looking for is transparency before allocation, not once it's already been decided how it's going to be used. We as a community need to have input on that for the mental, emotional, and educational components that need to be addressed. Thirdly, in regard to money, I don't know if you guys had an opportunity to read it, but if you didn't, I would encourage you to. Miguel A. Cardona, the United States Secretary of Education, on December 16th wrote a pretty fantastic letter talking about how to use the money to blunt the staff shortage, and breaks it down on all levels, encouraging districts, superintendents, and communities to use that money to blunt the staff shortage. That's what we've heard, is that we've had a problem with staffing from day one. I strongly encourage you guys to read it because he breaks it down step by step. How to get more people in here, but not only get more people in here and help retain the staff that you have, pay them what they're worth, and get them the support that they need, which is the point that was made at the last meeting. That's a lot of what I have. I do have to say, I know taking the memorial down was needed, at a certain point, and it was deemed appropriate. But I guess I didn't realize I was heading back after dropping off my middle schooler or high school, I can't remember, or picking up or whatever it may be. Seeing the four flags down, I thought those should have been left. I feel like that's trying to erase those children that have been taken away from this family, and I think that should have been considered as a simple gesture to acknowledge the children that were lost. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Brian, to your first question, the safety committee is looking at a visual secondary announcement approach. You mentioned potentially a teacher responding to students about accept it and move on. The bathroom vaping. Every time you've come, you've been asking for proactive communication, that we open up some parent forums and student forums and allow that communication. Let's do some of what we did with Sam Barna as before allocation versus after allocation. You mentioned the gentleman who wrote how to use money to blunt staff shortages, and then a concern about the 4 flags that were removed at the memorial site. Thank you. Heather?
Thank you. Firstly, I wanted to offer my condolences, and I wanted to attempt to couch this in a way that hopefully encourages you. Some may have already made up their mind that speaking about masks at a time like this is insensitive, in poor taste, or even wrong. But for those of us in this room who have been unrelenting in our pursuit of choice, we do not. What we see are bureaucrats who have failed the children in this country, county, and this town because of the political allegiance and myopic lens in which they viewed COVID. It's the end result of potentially a crowd of people who are maybe a little louder, maybe a little more incessant with their need to control others, but we are seeing community event after community event where even they are relenting on the narratives that are crumbling faster than they can keep up with. What your community needs from you in regards to your advocacy to legislators, to OCHD as opposed to a vote, because I understand that that's not going to be happening, is bravery. For you to stand up for the dignity of choice, for you to give your students and teachers the relief and healing that comes from seeing each other. You can and you should. And let it be said that at this time in your life, you didn't cower. You stood up. You spoke up. Our children, their children, and my children have sacrificed enough. Unelected officials charged with this mandate have let you down. They've not heard your advocacy, but they'll tweet about it if it serves them. I'm asking you to do what no public school in Oakland or Wayne or any of the counties that are currently under mandates have really had the bravery to do. And that's to advocate for a return to local control. I'm asking you to unmask Oxford now. Thank you.
Thank you. Working backwards, be brave enough to stand up for the choice, allow these kids to heal, advocate for local control, parental choice. Yeah. Thank you. That's it.
Can I get my 3 minutes back since you didn't give me a reason?
I don't.
I have 5 minutes. Can I have my 3 back? No First Amendment here? Okay.
All right, that's all of them. I don't have another one. So we move on to clarifications, item number 11. While you've got scheduled activities, don't miss those. And we also have some board meetings coming up, so make sure those are on your calendars. Final board comments? All right. I think in the hearing of some things, to leave you with some information so it doesn't get misconstrued, there was some implication that we moved from fear of liability to this, to this, to this, to this. No, they're all there. They're all present, but maybe not all said at one time. So it's not a board shifting, it's a board maybe stating some things that it hadn't said before and finally wanted to complete the list. I would say that Dr. Henry has been one of the largest advocates and instructors on the social-emotional side of the recovery of this process and guiding our administration, our cabinet, and into how to do certain things a certain way. He's the same man who spoke to all of you through video. He has tirelessly been in our district amongst our kids. He's trained our teachers. So I guess I want you to know that, so that you don't think that we just came back to school without a plan. It was a guided plan, a strongly guided plan. And I think other than that, I don't think I want to address anything else at this point. Appreciate your involvement. Appreciate your approaches to how you've dealt with some of your concerns or questions. So thank you. I don't think there's anything under other. I don't think there's anything new to address. So it is 10:21, and we're going to adjourn this meeting. It's a great day to be a Wildcat. Thank you.